The carriage drew closer to Booksellers' Row, and Beatrice Clayborn drew in a hopeful breath before she cast her spell. Head high, spine straight, she hid her hands in her pockets and curled her fingers into mystic signs as the fiacre jostled over green cobblestones. She had been in Bendleton 3 days, and while its elegant buildings and clean streets were the prettiest trap anyone could step into, Beatrice would have given anything to be somewhere else, anywhere but here, at the beginning of bargaining season. She breathed out the seeking tendrils of her spell, touching each of the shop fronts. If a miracle rushed over her skin and prickled at her ears. But there was nothing. Not a glimmer, not even an itch. They passed the Rook's Tower Books, P.T. Williams and Sons, and the celebrated House of Verdure, which filled a full third of a block with all its volumes. Beatrice let out a sigh. No miracle, no freedom, no hope. But when they rounded the corner from Booksellers' Row to a narrow grey lane with no name, Beatrice's spell bloomed in response. There, a grimoire. There was no way to know what it contained, but she smiled up at the sky as she pulled on the bell next to her seat. "Driver, stop!" She slid forward on the fiacre's padded seat, ready to jump into the street by herself. "Clara, can you complete the fitting for me?" "Miss Beatrice, you mustn't!" Clara clutched at Beatrice's wrist. "It should be you." "You're exactly my size. It won't matter," Beatrice said. "Besides, you're better at the colour and trimmings and such. I'll just be a few minutes, I promise." Her maid companion shook her head. "You mustn't miss your appointment at the chapter house. I cannot stand in for you when you meet Danton Masonette the way I can at the dressmaker's." Beatrice was not going to let that book slip out of her grasp. She patted Clara's hand and wriggled loose. "I'll be there in time, Clara. I promise I won't miss it. I just need to buy a book." Clara tilted her head. "Why this place?" "I wrote to them," Beatrice lied. "Finding it is a stroke of luck. I won't be 10 minutes." Clara sighed and loosed her grip on Beatrice's wrist. "Very well." The driver moved to assist, but Beatrice vaulted to the street, tight-laced stays and all, and waved them off. "Thank you. Go!" She pivoted on one delicate pillar-heeled shoe and regarded the storefront. Harriman's was precisely the kind of bookstore Beatrice sought every time she was in a new town, the ones run by people who couldn't bear to throw books away no matter what was inside the covers, so long as they could be stacked and shelved and housed. Beatrice peered through the windows, revelling at the pang within her senses that set her ears alert and tingling, their spell signalling that a grimoire awaited amid the clutter. She hadn't found a new one in months. The doorbell jingled as Beatrice crossed into the bookkeeper's domain. Harriman's. Oh, dust and ink and leather binding. Oh, map scrolls and star prints and poetry chapbooks. And the grimoire somewhere within. She directed her smile at the clerk in shirt-sleeves and waistcoat, waiting at the front counter. "Just having a browse," she said, and moved past without inviting further conversation. Beatrice followed her prickling thumbs between stacks of books and laden shelves. She breathed in old paper and the thin, rain-on-green stone scent of magic, looking not for respectable novels or seemly poetry, but for the authors certain young women never even dared whisper to each other in the powder rooms and parlours of society, the writers of the secret grimoires. It was here, but it wouldn't do to be too hasty, to follow the pull of her senses toward the stack where the volume rested, its spine bearing an author name like John Estlin Churchman, or J.C. Everworth, or perhaps E. James Curtfield. The authors always bore those initials on all of the books in her modest collection, stored away from curious eyes. The clerk might wonder at how she knew exactly where to find the book she wanted in all this jumble. She browsed through literature, in history, and even in the occult sections where other patrons would eye her with disapproval, because the realm of magic was not suitable territory for a woman of a certain youth. Just thinking of her exclusion made Beatrice's scalp heat. For women, magic was the solitary pursuit of widows and crones, not for the woman whose most noble usefulness was still intact. The inner doors of the chapter house were barred to her, while a man with the right connections could elevate himself through admittance and education among his fellow magicians. Anyone with the talent could see the aura of sorcery shining from Beatrice's head, all the better to produce more magicians for the next generation. Oh, how she hated it! To be reduced to such a common capability, her magic untrained until some year in her twilight, finally allowed to pursue the only path she cared for? She would not.